What's up, good people of Earth? Let me see. I'm sorry, I'm eating an ice cream bar. Very rude of me. That's the best piece of the ice cream bar. The little piece of chocolate that stays on the bar. And of course, it falls on the floor. You know what that means? I gotta eat another one. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, let me find this background. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the crowd. Bottles of Peters and Crackle Jacks. Ladies and gentlemen, it is baseball season. We should have a baseball background. Host. We should have a baseball OVC background. Root, root, root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. For it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. What's another song they sing at baseball games? Sweet Caroline, ba, ba, ba. Good times never was so good. So good, so good, so good. I've been inclined, bo, 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 to believe they never were. Do they still do God Bless America at the 7th inning stretch? I can do that one too. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Play ball. I haven't watched a baseball game in a long time. And you know why? They keep moving them things around. It used to be that you could watch baseball on local TV. Why did it do that? Why'd you do that? And you could watch every game. What are we doing? TikTok. What are we doing? I'm trying. You could watch baseball on local TV for the 4th time. You could watch every game. Then they changed it to you can only watch it on like Fox or something. And TBS. I couldn't even tell you what channels those are. Is that like 19 and 25 or something? I don't even know. And then they were like, no, you can only watch certain games on TV. The rest of them, you'll have to buy this app. You'll have to buy access to the MLB app to watch baseball. And then for the Cleveland Guardians, they changed it to you have to pay for a subscription to whatever network is showing the Guardians games. I think it was something like the BSN Network, something like that. Bally Sports, that's what it was. Bally Sports Network. You have to buy a subscription to the Bally Sports Network. Now, who knows? I don't know if I'll ever see a Guardians game. I did see some of a game, the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, yesterday while I was at the dentist. So, yay me. Hello, Aida.
Hi, how's it going?
Great. I'm just wasting time up here waiting for people to come into the room, waiting for you. You were here. Aida, have you shared this live with your followers?
Yes, I shared it on Instagram and on TikTok.
Okay, so what I need for you to do is share it on TikTok.
Oh, how would I do that? This is my first live.
Oh, okay. Well, you see where it's the graphic is that says town hall and then your name?
Yeah.
Okay, you're going to long press on that. You see
Okay.
a list of followers come up?
Yes.
Okay, so you're just going to go down the line and send them this live.
Okay.
Be like, hey, I'm on TikTok live with OVC. And then you can also repost it so that it shows up on people's FYP. And you can also add it to your story. If you go to the arrow, you see the arrow pointing to should be to the right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, you click on that and it should have add to story, repost. And so you can do that.
Okay, awesome.
And that's how you share it.
Great. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I love doing these mini tutorials of TikTok Live. I'm actually going to run up these likes. And see if we can get some more people in here because you're a very important person, Aida. You're a very important person.
Thank you.
And for some reason, TikTok keeps taking my picture away, but okay. You're running for city attorney
Correct.
for Los Angeles, California.
Yes. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for trusting us to share your platform. California is a state we hear about all the time. I have never been, and I don't feel it is my place to speak on a place I've never been to. But we've had lots of candidates from California on our panels, and I feel like I've gotten to know a lot about the state. So
Where are you?
I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, I'm in Ohio, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm in Ohio. OVC, we're from all over the country. We have people in the South, in the North, East Coast, West Coast. We're all over. But we're united through TikTok. That's how we all met. We all met through TikTok. So my name is Ayana, by the way, and this is Our Vote Counts, which is a nonpartisan coalition of citizens from diverse states and backgrounds united by a shared commitment to empowering voters and promoting candidates who stand for integrity, inclusion, and accountability in the upcoming elections. And boy, do we have a lot upcoming. Our Vote Counts is more than a name. It's a promise, a movement, and a rallying cry for democracy. Together, we are shaping the future, one informed vote at a time. Tonight, I am speaking with Aida Ashouri. Is that how you pronounce your last name? Okay. Uh, Aida is a human rights lawyer, legal aid advocate, and former city attorney's office attorney who's worked everywhere from LA neighborhoods to international tribunals. Aida is a former staff attorney at Public Counsel and Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles, representing tenants and low-income small business owners. We're going to dive into her story, her work, and her run for city attorney. The Office of City Attorney, just so people know, In Los Angeles, the city attorney is the city's general counsel and serves as legal advisor to the mayor, city council, and the hundreds of boards, departments, officers, and entities that make up the city of Los Angeles. The office of the city attorney is responsible for providing advice and legal opinions to every officer, department head, board, commission, and other unit of the city, and preparing and signing off on all contracts and other legal relationships of the city of Los Angeles. And according to an article I read in the LA Public Press from March of this year, it is not the flashiest political office in Los Angeles. This is a direct quote. It is not the flashiest political office in Los Angeles. Many people don't even know it exists or what it does, but the city attorney is one of LA's most powerful offices, performing a range of functions, including prosecuting misdemeanors, advising politicians on local legislation, defending the city against lawsuits, and enforcing consumer protection laws, including those that protect tenant rights. This influence can at times be controversial, being politicized and having too many functions. The incumbent, Heidi Feldstein Soto, is also no stranger to controversy. Her critics point to her efforts to block an affordable housing project and to lift a judge's order limiting LAPD's use of force against protesters. In this year's midterm elections, Feldstein Soto finds herself pitted against 3 other candidates who promise a different approach to the office. One of those candidates is Aida Ashouri. As city attorney, she wants to, direct quote, exercise a more humane approach to prosecution. You want to put more funding into the office's dispute resolution program and resolve more cases through mediation and not trials. Aida, please tell us more about yourself and why you are running for the office of city attorney.
Well, again, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate spaces like these that bring candidates to the people. Definitely, our political system is still very much, harnessed by money, and money has a big impact on politics. And these types of, programs help remove that factor and brings people directly, through a grassroots town hall. So I appreciate you putting this together and as volunteers. So, and I want to first talk about a little bit my background. I'm an immigrant. I was raised by a single parent in working class neighborhoods in the Valley. And, most of my first years of my life was sharing a 1-bedroom with my mom. And later on, moving up into townhomes, things like that. And seeing my mom struggle with, issues like wage theft, discrimination, sexual harassment even, really put me on notice about the injustices that people face and working communities face. And I think as a young age, I was thinking about justice issues. And actually, I was involved in helping organize students at my high school at age 17 against at the time, Proposition 21, which was something that Pete Wilson, the governor at the time, created to essentially allow for racial profiling of youth of color. And it was something that I helped organize with. We organized a walkout over months, organizing students at the high school, and we ended up doing a walkout of 1,500 students in protest. And that was also the first time I started canvassing, and I canvassed door to door as a 17-year-old in opposition and just trying to explain, why we shouldn't pass this legislation. And that experience really catapulted me into being an activist. And I work with organizations called the Bus Riders Union that helped basically combat any type of racial profiling on our public transit systems and also make them more green and less polluting in our environment, as well as Communities for a Better Environment, which basically opposed the opening of an oil refinery in a neighborhood. And we were successful at that. Later on, I also worked on immigrant rights issues and making sure that we oppose any form of profiling of our immigrant community and the unjust, deportations without due process that were happening under Bush. And now we're seeing that, in full gear again. And I worked in a lot of different human rights spaces, both in Geneva and Washington, D.C. And then as an attorney in Los Angeles, I worked in immigrant rights issues, as well as you mentioned, the city attorney's office itself. I'm the only candidate that's actually worked on the criminal side of the city attorney's office, and I've worked in two city attorney's offices, the LA and the San Diego ones as well. I worked in legal aid, like I had mentioned, which was helping low-income small businesses that were facing, evictions, as well as different issues being low-income small businesses, and as well as tenants. And my firsthand experience is actually both in the city attorney's office and as legal aid is what inspired me to run. Because in the city attorney's office, I would see case after case of basically racial profiling or police misconduct or even criminalization of poverty being filed without any form of policy by the city attorney to, dictate what kind of cases we should be filing or not. And that's also reflective of the lack of transparency of the city attorney's office. But on top of that, as a housing rights attorney, I would speak to tenant organizers and bring in cases with, 40 unit buildings where the landlord was doing illegal renovations, pushing tenants out, leaving people with like holes in their walls, rats, cockroaches, no repairs. And I would work at these nonprofits and they just weren't at capacity to take on lawsuits, to take on these landlords. But I would see other cities like Oakland and San Francisco taking on landlords and being proud defendants of renters' rights. And that's when I realized the city attorney really is not utilizing its position to the degree it should be in terms of protecting renters. And so I've been frustrated with people running for these positions, which is a pattern you see all around the country, is lacking the experience, but wanting that political, platform to launch their career. And, we haven't had a city attorney that's had any criminal justice experience in decades. And that's just, to me, a contributor to why we have the issues we have in our city, why we have city attorneys that are defending the violation of civil rights of journalists over, like the people or city attorneys who continue to enforce policies that continue racial profiling. And so as someone who's worked, in the criminal division, I've also advised the city as a board member of the Los Feliz Neighborhood Council in California or Los Angeles. We have these local councils where you get elected onto a board and you advise the city on different policies. And I've also worked in law firms helping defend and also file lawsuits, which is the bulk of the city attorney's office, which 35% is prosecuting misdemeanors, 20% is defending lawsuits, and then 20% is advising the departments and commissions that you mentioned, and then the rest of it is working with like different agencies and filing lawsuits. So
okay, so the incumbent has not been long serving in the office, right?
just one
So
term.
we do have our first question from the audience. We don't usually do it this way, but because people are showing up and they're excited to talk to you, we're going to go ahead and get right to it. That girl with the animals, hello, she says, hello, Aida. What separates you from the incumbent Soto?
Well, I touched upon it. Thank you for that question. I touched upon it a little bit earlier, where I'm the only candidate. One of the only candidates that actually has criminal justice experience. The only candidate that's actually worked in the criminal division of the city attorney's office. The only candidate that's worked in both the two different cities in the city attorney's offices, and I'm the only candidate also that's had experience in multiple divisions. So I've worked in filing lawsuits. I've worked in defending lawsuits, which is really important because our city has a massive debt in these liability lawsuits because it just doesn't know how to settle lawsuits, how to go to trial on lawsuits. And I've worked at a law firm that had multi-million-dollar lawsuits with corporations, with insurance companies, and so I understand the techniques with which to analyze whether a case is worth going to trial on. And I've done 11 trials, which is 11 more than she has. So there's a lot of experience there. There's a lot of experience there, and there's there's other candidates that have never done a trial in their life. Reading about, criminal justice issues, reading about these, legal defenses is not, there's no comparison to actual firsthand experience. Actual firsthand experience, calling a jury, speaking to the jury, realizing, even you can gauge with the jury, what are they frustrated with, why they don't like the city called them on this specific case, which they think is like a waste of our resources. And I think that's so important because I had to deal with a lot of cases where people were just really unhappy having to be pulled from their work because it was, an unhoused person that just happened to be in a place that, it wasn't a welcome, and he ended up being pepper sprayed, and he was the one arrested, and it's just not a good use of our time. And then, or, you see people, young men of color who've been arrested, and, for just charging their cell phone at the metro station. Things are just crimes of poverty that we end up paying thousands of dollars for the trial itself, then pulling all these people out of their homes, out of their, making them have to, buy daycare, spend money on daycare, things like that, which it's just not a good use of our time. But one of the other issues that I think is really important, is the vulnerable victims of violence in our city. A leading cause of homelessness in our city is domestic violence. And when I was at the city attorney's office, that victims of violence were often overlooked because their cases were considered difficult. The current incumbent, she's actually dismantled a lot of specialized units. One of them was the family violence unit that was specifically prosecuting crimes of domestic violence, sexual violence, and child crimes. This unit was the most, I would say, the most effective attorneys in our whole office because they knew the seriousness of these crimes and they had the best experience. Dismantling that unit made that office less effective in handling that crimes, and it just showed how little value that the incumbent has on these issues in terms of protecting survivors. She also dismantled the code enforcement unit, which went after landlords or slumlords who refused to repair properties. She's I think you had mentioned she's been blocking affordable housing, but she also blocked signing a contract to help get lawyers to tenants to defend themselves in eviction proceedings. So she wasted time regarding that. The other thing she also closed was the environmental crimes unit. Our city in Los Angeles, we have the worst air pollution when we have a lot of corporations that have gotten away with violating laws. And dismantling that unit makes our city even weaker in regards to that. And so I'm the only candidate actually who has environmental justice experience as well. I've done advocacy on environmental justice level as a lawyer and as an activist. And I just think all of this firsthand experience is so important in this position. The other thing that's really important to me, I'm also a cyclist and a transit user, and our current city attorney is trying to block this law called Measure HLA, which would have implemented bike and bus lanes in streets that are dangerous, that have a lot of people who have died on them because they're unsafe. And we get sued, the city gets sued because of these types of streets. And so I want to make our streets safer for everybody. And because of this experience, I've worked on the neighborhood council. Actually, I expanded slow streets measures like roundabouts and bollards that slow down traffic for families. And I've had parents tell me how grateful they are that I helped do that. So I'm in it to do the actual work. I've been a public servant already, on the neighborhood council. I've been an advocate as a housing rights attorney in criminal justice and as a human rights activist. And so I'm ready to be a public servant. My goal is not to be a politician, but I want to help serve the public and make our city better and safe for everyone.
Okay, thank you for that. Also, Mike has a question. He says, is there a specific case you feel prepared you to help carry out the policies you prioritize?
Thank you for that question. I've worked on lots of cases. Just those 11 criminal trials, there was a lot of trials I settled, that aren't, maybe like hundreds that I had to be in office or be in the court, talking to opposing counsel or interviewing a victim of violence. And I think those direct experiences with the clients is what really has prepared me, because like I was saying earlier, reading about things, reading, memos, researching things online doesn't give you the same impact or insight as being in a clinic for tenants' rights, on Skid Row, and talking directly to people who are facing these challenges with their landlords illegally raising their rents or refusing to do repairs. It also doesn't show you the side of poverty that you don't might not see when you're just working in an office and you have a gap between the people and yourself. And I think it's so important. And even my own background, coming from a more working class background, having worked since I was 18 years old, my first job was a cashier at Arby's. I'm coming from like very blue collar background, but having to work really hard to get to a top 10 law school has taught me so much. And it's taught me that we have to bring everybody up with us too. And so I consider my campaign more of a movement to inspire other people just like me to run. But also when I'm in office, I want to also make sure that I am communicating with people just like this town hall, because our elected leaders often, don't have that open form of communication. They aren't with the people. And I've been out there at rallies, at union strikes, protests, at city council meetings, and I've been the only candidate at any of these events. And I think that's telling is if people aren't going to do the work now, how are they going to be expected to do that in City Hall? So I think all of those things really have helped prepare me for being in this position, being in office.
All right, thank you. And I appreciate the questions from the audience. Again, if you have any questions and you're out there listening, you can leave them in the chat, or you can hit the multi-guest and you can come up and ask Aida yourself. Also, a reminder, because I forgot to remind you, but you didn't really say any of these words. There's certain words that TikTok does not like to hear, words associated with violence. So any kind of like the word for this thing or the word for abortion, the word for genocide, things like that. Just use kind of soft language so we can keep things rolling so they don't give us a violation. We call it TikTok friendly language, right? So a lot of the questions I was going to ask you in the beginning, you really just kind of rolled through them. But what do you think people misunderstand about the role of the city attorney?
This is a great question. A lot of my campaigning has actually been just educating people about the office, because a lot of people, like we discussed earlier, don't know that it exists, and they don't know how powerful it can be. Mm-hmm. And I think of it as almost like a check and balance on the mayor and city council, because it's really supposed to advise them on the law, tell them like when they're proposing something is illegal or not. And it has a lot of autonomy. And I think that's what people don't realize, that there's a lot of independent autonomy. They're not really the employee necessarily of the mayor and city council. They're really operating their own office. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it's an office of 500 people. It's not just like, you're assembly member and you open your own office with your employees and you hire people. These are 500 people who are part of a union. So you can't just fire everybody and bring in your own people. And so it's really important for candidates to really understand the different facets of the office. Like land use, is a big issue in that office in terms of, determining whether or not planning projects are abiding by the law, or even defending the city in lawsuits regarding those projects. And having been on the committee for the planning and land use in my neighborhood council, I've actually reviewed a lot of projects and commented on them. And I think it's an important niche area of law. The Brown Act, which is something unique to California, talking about California, we have a law that requires transparency in all our meetings. So you cannot, and you can't really speak outside of a public meeting to just make decisions about the city. And you also have to publicize, meeting agendas, all these different things. And our current city attorney apparently doesn't know enough about the Brown Act because she violated it and we got sued. So basically, what, yeah, what had happened was, well, the city's already being sued because it's not doing enough to protect homeless people or provide any services. And it's become entangled in a lot of outside counsel. It was originally earmarked something like $800,000 for outside counsel. Now it's 7.5 million because they're fighting it too much and they should just settle it. Excuse me. But also it's, so there was a backroom meeting with city council and they say it's part of the lawsuit, but they decided to sweep, which basically means demolish everybody's belongings, 9,000 encampments.
Oh, wow.
And after that meeting, the representative for the city attorney, should have reported what happened, should have stated who voted how. They did not. And, the body that is suing the city found out about this and sued the city. So another lawsuit because of, problems with, this office. And even though they won their lawsuit, people still don't know how the city council voted. And I think that's really important for people to know is, who decided this. And that's part of the Brown Act. And so I think people don't realize that this office not only does it have so much power, so many people involved, but it's how we maintain ethics in our city, how we make sure that we hold those people accountable and that they're not, like the Brown Act situation, they're not trying to do something behind our backs. It's a way that we make sure that everybody in our city is upholding the law, whether it's the police, the fire department, or our mayor, making sure everybody is following the law. And that's the advisory role. It's also the role when we're defending the lawsuits. We're making sure that we're defending it in an ethical way. We're not, going after these victims of crime. We're pushing the city to change its policies based on these lawsuits. This is potentially what the city attorney's office could be under my.
So that kind of answers. Someone had a question about how you would handle the liability cases differently, the civil lawsuits differently, and you're kind of touching on that. But you also mentioned that you would do alternate dispute resolution. You would do mediation versus, trying to settle it amicably between both parties versus going to court and paneling a jury and having, people come in and do these long trials and et cetera, et cetera. You can't do that for every case, obviously. And maybe ADR would be a better way of handling it. So how would you implement that in the office?
Exactly right. There's so many other tools to mediate a case. We had a really good mediation program that prevented, resolved disputes like between neighbors or something like that. So it didn't have to go to like either a criminal trial or a civil trial. And I think we need to fund that program a lot more. As well, we used to have a neighborhood prosecutor program that our current city attorney also ended, which allowed allowed people to basically they were assigned different neighborhoods and they would go to town halls, they would go to meetings for neighborhood councils, they would go to meetings with the police department to be directly connected with the community, and they were on the ground. So we had, the city attorney's office had a direct connection to the people to resolve disputes. And I want to expand that office, but incorporate the mediation or restorative justice angle. But yeah, I think, having my experience defending lawsuits, I would have a better angle of identifying how we can resolve lawsuits and how to hire better people as well that have that experience, because we need to stop, spending millions on outside counsel and making sure that we actually are hiring people that have the relevant experience. And the outside counsel, our current city attorney, for some reason, always picks the most expensive law firm to do outside counsel with. For the homeless.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
Yeah. And for the homelessness lawsuit, they are charging $1,000 an hour, something like that, and or they had $1,000 lunches, like something like ridiculous. And they were, yeah, it was like almost $2 million just for 2 weeks of work, from this law firm. So hiring better people, and also, I think I was talking about this earlier. LAPD needs to catch up with a lot of its policies. And like there was a case with the cousin of a Black Lives Matter founder who was tased to death by LAPD, Keenan Anderson. And at that time, I mean, still they don't, there's no policy on how many times they can tase someone or how long. And that same year, instead of changing that, they went from two-pronged tasers to 10-pronged tasers that can be shot from farther distance. And that was their remedy. So my goal is in these lawsuits, which, these lawsuits are coming because the city did something wrong. And so we need to prevent that from happening again. So I want to push for court orders for LAPD to adopt these policies, or just push and advise LAPD to adopt a policy like on tasers. I also want to look at all the different lawsuits regarding our poor roads and see, where are there places that we can change, we can fix these roads to prevent people who are getting injured, on them, or sidewalks. Because this is basically what I did on the neighborhood council, as I went around, in our community, finding places that we can improve, like repainting this street, putting speed bumps in. And this is the boring, Parks and Rec type of like,
no, Parks and Rec is hilarious. What do you mean?
It's that the boring governance that like people want to do the flashy stuff. I want to file lawsuits. I want to arrest everyone. But it's like the boring stuff that people don't want to do is really what's going to change our lives, and what's going to reduce these types of deaths or injuries. And that's something that I've already been doing, and what I want to continue as city attorney.
Okay. And, in the state of Ohio, there's ADR for landlord-tenant disputes. They do mediation. Is that something that the city attorney's office can do, or are they looking at that? Or are you thinking about implementing that when you win?
So we don't like represent people in their disputes with their landlords. What the city attorney does is sues landlords for not repairing the buildings. So it's more of like a on behalf of the like a code violation type of thing. Okay. But we can't represent people individually because the city is our client. So we are basically kind of suing on behalf of the city, essentially, as well as, behalf of we earn money for the people. But there's different codes, like Business and Profession Code 17200. We can also sue employers for wage theft. That's a statutory right that we have. So, but yeah, we have the contract program with those nonprofits. They're the ones that are in eviction court and representing the clients. And
okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, that sounds like a lot of work. Woo! That's much more exciting than my little boring lawyer job of just reading about people's illnesses and diseases all day. So, how should you mentioned that. How should the city respond when corporate landlords repeatedly violate housing codes? Is this something that's an issue in your city?
It's a really big issue. There's a large percentage of people, I think about 1/9 of the population or something bigger, that live in homes that have, cockroach infestations, rat infestations, and it increases when you get to the lower income apartment buildings. Mm-hmm. And we also have a high vacancy rate. So there's a lot of landlords that are just holding on to units because they're trying to drive up rents. So there's like a bunch of different things going on. But when I was talking about that 40-unit building, I was investigating that was doing illegal renovations and, leaving tenants with, asbestos and holes in the walls. They didn't pay the construction workers. So the state sued them, and they were put into what's called REAP, which is basically after years of them not fixing the building, the city kind of takes over and says, you're not going to get rent anymore. They're going to pay rent basically to us instead. But when I did that research, I found out they did the same exact thing to another building of something like 30 units. And the big issue in Los Angeles is there's something like 27,000 complaints that have been filed against landlords, and only 30 were referred to the city attorney's office.
Oh.
So that just shows you, one, there's like an incredible amount of bureaucracy happening, right? That there's like years of these investigations and inspections, and they wait until something is absolutely horrendous. The ones that have been referred to the city attorney's office, the landlord bear maced a tenant, like it's just like to that to that level. Like, why do we need to wait, for that?
Yeah. Goodness gracious. Oh my gosh. So is it a staffing problem that, they're only selecting a certain number because they don't have enough staff to read all of the facts of the case and do the investigation? Or is it just, they pick a random number. They're like, oh, we're only going to do 30 this year. What's the issue?
I think it's definitely a staffing problem, and it's like they're waiting for so much before referring it. But I also think it's an issue where the city is waiting for the bureaucracy rather than trying to go in and resolve it itself. Like if you go to the Oakland City Attorney's office, you can file your grievances right with the city attorney right on the website. Like we could do the same exact thing because the city attorney's office has the same power to investigate those cases, to be able to go in to these homes and see whether or not we should bring these lawsuits. Like we shouldn't have to wait till they fix the bureaucracy. Like, like we have the power to go in right now to remedy these things, because right now, our rents are going up, and if the landlords don't feel that there's anybody holding them accountable, we're going to see this grow, especially when in Los Angeles, we're having the Olympics coming. And
that's right.
Yeah, we're going to see more people being pushed out, rents being affected by that, even illegal Airbnbs, which that's another thing the city has not cracked down on, is all the illegal Airbnbs in the city, which could bring in money, all these fines, but they're not pursuing them. And that's something I would also want to look into as well.
That's really interesting that they're not pursuing these. Like they're purposely not pursuing them. Are they trying not to ruffle feathers? Are they afraid that there's going to be pushback, and then when people go for re-election, they're not going to get reelected? Or that's wild. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say the real estate lobby is very strong in California, and the current incumbent actually received $200,000 from a big landlord for her campaign.
Oh, well, there you go. Money buys access. That's corruption. That sounds like an ethics issue. Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not in California. I'm just in Ohio. Mike wants to know of your... Oh, wait a minute. He wants to know, how do you feel about the LA Review Board trying to split the role of city attorney? Oh, he was saying that none of your opponents have commented on it yet. That's what he was saying. But he wants to know your opinion on it.
Yeah, this is so important to me because we saw a few weeks ago or days ago that Trump just fired Pam Bondi, out of nowhere, essentially. That could be literally what city of LA could become, because they want to make the position appointed subject to the mayor's appointment. No. It will be approved by city council. It's extremely problematic. They tried to do this before, I think, because the city has always wanted kind of their personal lawyer, or the mayor, I should say, the mayor and city council kind of wanted their personal lawyer to advise them personally of things. But this is, like you were talking about, conflict of interest, ethics. Like we have had 5 council members indicted for corruption in the last 7 years. Ooh. I don't think they should be the ones choosing our city attorney.
No, they should not. Oh, yeah. That's not good.
Exactly.
That's not good.
Yeah. I do think there's problems, but that's because there's money in politics. Like until we get money out politics out, we're going to have corruption. This is going to be part of the risk. But also what they want to do is split the office which is they want the civil side, the advising and lawsuit side to be picked by the city, which is, the side that actually has the most risk of corruption attached to it, because it's like, the people who the city is suing, the people, defending and advising, but the criminal side, they want to keep elected, which doesn't make any sense because I've never heard of a city attorney prosecuting misdemeanors being elected separately like that, by itself anywhere in the world, much less California. And every single major city in California, Fresno, San Diego, San Francisco, Oakland, all of these cities have elected city attorneys in the exact same format that our current office is. And so there's really no reason. It's going to make it more inefficient because imagine we have two separate offices. You're going to duplicate efforts like HR, all these different offices. And to me, you're going to actually, besides the whole like possible corruption issue, you're going to actually increase conflict of interest because you have two separate people now running these offices. So what if there's a conflict in terms of one person wants to sue someone and the other person wants to criminally indict them, or vice versa? How are they going to choose policies on issues? And you could have someone, two completely different people that knock heads on issues that deal with the same type of issues in the city. So there's a lot of potential problems, and it's unfortunate that the city is not making it into a big deal as it is, because to me it's a big risk of conflict of interest, corruption, inefficiency, waste of money and resources too. Like they're going to have to build separate offices. Like it just I don't see the reason for it.
If the city attorney's office is that of I see as an advisor, but advising you on the best route to take in a particular matter, then that office should not be appointed, because of course I'm going to tell you whatever it is you want to hear. I'm not going to tell you what's best for the people, what's best for the city. I'm going to tell you whatever is most, expedient for you, right? And that's not good. That's not good. At least in my opinion, that's not good. That's a definite conflict of interest. It should be, it's not independent, but it should be separate from these elected offices. It should have nothing to do with the city council and the mayor. If the mayor wants a lawyer, well, the mayor can get his own lawyer, his or her own lawyer. If the city council wants a lawyer, they can get their own lawyer, and they obviously need it. But those are different functions, They're not, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
That would be inefficient. I agree with you. Let's see. So how do you define public safety in the context of the city attorney's responsibilities?
This is a great question, and being the only, candidate that's worked in the criminal side of the city attorney's office, and I've worked with, LAPD investigating cases, done ride-alongs. I've worked on the other side when it comes to, working with victims of crime as well, and as a volunteer. And I think we have to make sure that we're prioritizing cases with vulnerable victims of crime. I had mentioned domestic violence victims earlier and how they're so overlooked by our office. A big problem with prosecutors' offices is they prioritize convictions over care, where if there's no possibility where they can get a conviction, they really don't give much time to the victim. And I think that our city should work with social workers or victim support centers to connect these people with services. See how we can make sure that people who they don't have to choose, being at home, being in a violent home, or living on the street. We have to see how we can help these people. The other thing I want to make sure that we help, hold accountable is LA is the #1 city for hit and runs in the country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And as a cyclist and with lots of friends who are cyclists, I know people who have been hit unconscious, left bleeding in the street. And the officer will tell them, well, since you're not severely injured or dead, we're not going to investigate the case.
Oh, come on. Come on.
It's unacceptable to me. And I would want to prioritize and make sure that vehicular crimes are taken seriously, because just because you have a car and you use it to try to injure someone, to try to intimidate someone, which I've experienced, which I've seen, it's inexcusable. We have to make sure to keep everybody safe on our streets. And that goes for, DUIs and other types of crimes. And then this also goes to like the restorative justice I said before, because there's a lot of other crimes that don't really need to be prosecuted.
Right.
Crimes of poverty, or people say, what is it? Crimes related to people who are dealing with poverty, and those crimes really, we should try to find services for them, like, also in terms of addiction. Before Reagan, addiction was considered a public health issue. But post Reagan, it's, vilifying people who have a serious health issue. They have an addiction problem that needs to be resolved. Putting people in jail is not going to resolve their addiction problem. And it's actually costing us more money doing that. Putting unhoused people in jail because they don't have a place to go to and destroying all their belongings, including their, birth certificate or their IDs, that doesn't help them get housing. We need to make sure that we're actually, providing services, connecting people with services, rather than, we have the most overcrowded jails. We've had the most overcrowded jails in the country in California, and I don't think it's a good use of resources to criminalize people who are poor, and use our resources for that. And I know this because I've talked to juries after the trials where I've had to do that as a deputy city attorney, where I've had to prosecute people who were unhoused, who were, engaging in sex work. And that one, jurors were mad at me for that. I had a
We're prosecuting schmex workers. They're upset. Well, I mean, I don't know. I have, and she's now deceased, but I have my college roommate was homeless, and she was often criminalized for camping. And, you get a ticket, you get a court date, you might have to stay overnight in jail. And if you don't come back, you get a warrant. And I get it. I'm a lawyer. That's the law, right? You have to follow the law, but at the same time, if you don't have the resources to even have a place to live, you're not prioritizing coming back for court. You're not going to do it. But then if you're on the street again and the police find you, they pick you up. Of course, you missed a court date. They're picking you up on a warrant. You're going to jail. How do you explain to a jury that I'm just following the law? This is just my job. I mean, I get it, but you can't just my job your way through a societal crisis,
Yeah, and that goes to prosecutorial discretion, right?
Right.
City attorney, that's the biggest power the city attorney has, is it can choose what cases to file, what convictions to pursue. And normally, a city attorney would have a list of ethical reasons. If we see police misconduct, like when I was in the attorney's office, I would see racial profiling cases repeatedly, where they were following a certain driver. They waited for them to not use a blinker, pull them over, ask to search their vehicle. Like, to me, that's not a form of investigation. That's not a good use of our resources. And even if they found something, I can't imagine how many people were pulled over until that person was found and they finally found some kind of contraband in their car. And to me, that's kind of like a violation of Fourth Amendment rights. It's not right that we do that. But it's also a way for us to be economical in our use of resources, because the city doesn't have a blank check. And we have to make sure that we're using our resources to protect people and not just, encourage this form of like racial profiling in communities of color, or like you said, going after folks that are camping. And for Los Angeles, failure to appear is the #1 arrest that LAPD makes.
Wow. And so it seems like what you're trying to do is take the city attorney's office from being just another arm of the punitive justice system into a more fair and balanced office, and make it more fair for the people. Whereas right now, it's not necessarily that. And you want it to be, because it sounds like you're literally the face of justice in Los Angeles, right? And it sounds like it should be made more fair, and that the incumbent is not really doing that. And so when you are out talking to people about your race and you're explaining this to them, what's the response that you get from potential voters about the race and about your chances of winning?
When I tell them my background and my policy platform positions, everybody's been very excited and supportive. I think the biggest hurdle obviously is informing people about the position, informing people about the race, and getting people out to vote, because primary races are not the most popular.
Yeah, so people don't even want to hear about primaries. Like I've been posting every day on my socials about primaries. People are just like, oh my God, here she goes again. Like it's that's where you choose the actual candidate who's gonna be running. You don't just show up in November and check a box. No, there's a whole process before then. And people are just they're not interested. So how do you get people excited about it?
I think, yeah, and actually, the two-party system has made it a little bit more difficult in California because of the primary system. Only two candidates can go ahead, regardless of their political party, and so it makes it really difficult for people outside that system, or even just who don't have a lot of money in their campaign
Right.
for advertising. And so I understand, in a way, I empathize the fact that, like, it feels like we're doing it twice, essentially, and but I think I try to tell them how I try to connect with them, like how the city attorney's office can impact them. So if they're a cyclist, I could tell them, well, I'll help make streets safer. If there's someone who's unhoused or who care about, poverty, I tell them about how I want to change that so we're not making that a crime. If they're a renter, I want to tell them I'm going to help protect you, and actually, that in turn can help lower rents. It can help people stay in their homes. And so it's really about connecting people with, like, what they care about, where they're at. If they're a protester, telling them, I'm going to make sure to reinforce your protest rights and and stand with you in these lawsuits. And if they're environmentalists, I would tell them about my extensive background on advocating for environmental issues and making sure that our city, which has done a terrible job of following its own environmental laws when it approves plans that destroy acres of trees and things like that. So making sure that we're following our own environmental laws, and yeah, and I think that's so important. And as someone who's been an activist for more than 25 years, who has worked on the ground with people as an organizer, canvasser, as someone who's organized things like teach-ins and even tutored with disadvantaged communities, that I feel like I have a pretty good background on how to connect with people and how understand how important that is. And so I've been really on the ground, just connecting with people at so many different events and meetings to make sure that they know who I am and that they know that I have their back.
And speaking of protests, someone asked earlier your opinion about how the city has handled the ICE and the protests surrounding that. What's your opinion on that? What do you think the city could have done better?
Yeah, so our city has had a legacy of not handling protests great. I was at the May Day protest, which resulted in a massive lawsuit where journalists were being attacked and thrown to the ground. There have been some changes, but I'm concerned our current chief of police has a history of working with the entity you had mentioned,
Uh,
and
yeah,
and
yeah.
and it's been documented that he shared data with the entity that you mentioned, and also a 17-year-old kid was blinded in one eye at the most recent protest.
Yeah, I
That is
remember that
just
story. That's
Yeah, that is just unacceptable. At the No Kings protest, I was there. I went left to go to an event, and then I found out they decided to declare an unlawful assembly. Nobody knew that they had declared it, but they sent out a text message that I got when I was at an event, which to me it's unacceptable. You can't declare an unlawful assembly by a text message. You need to inform the people that are there, and and then they started using tear gas. They started using non-lethal weapons, which ended up injuring people, and they arrested more than 60 people. And I went to the jail support, and I was there for hours waiting for people to get released. And this goes back to the fact that, this is not an effective use of our resources.
Right.
And this terrifies people from going to rallies, which they have every right to do, especially now. And so our current city attorney, I think you had mentioned this earlier, the day before the last No Kings protest, LAPD asked her to lift the court order preventing them from attacking journalists. Just
You know what? And I work for the government, so I know how awful we can be. But that's awful. That is awful. That's why? If anybody's okay, first of all, the protests are peaceful. But if anybody's going to be the most peaceful, it's the journalists. They're observing. That's all they're doing. So why would you even have it in your mind that you might have to attack one of them? That makes no sense.
Yes, their excuse was we can't tell them apart.
Oh, come on. Come on.
Yeah, and the city attorney was completely out of line by actually intervening on behalf of LAPD, to the point where city council actually had to go in.
I'm sorry about the fireworks going off. Could you repeat what you said?
I said it was completely unacceptable that the city attorney interviewed on behalf of the police chief. And it was to the point that the city council intervened and said, we have to file this emergency motion to prevent her from doing this. I mean, it's just it's ridiculous. And I think it's also reflective, again, of someone who doesn't have experience in this field, which, is half of the other candidates. This is a serious position, dealing with people's lives.
Is it nonpartisan?
Yes.
Somebody wants to know? Okay. It's nonpartisan.
Yes.
It should be. But also, you can't serve two masters, right? You're either going to serve the police, these executive functions, right? The city council, the mayor, and the police, or you're going to serve this judicial body. You can't do both. You can't.
Yeah. At the same time, when you are serving the interests of those specific people, that could also mean you're ignoring the civil rights issues, the
Exactly.
future liability of us being sued by those
Exactly.
people.
Exactly. Yes. Listen, somebody said it in the comments, but he said that you have their vote and they'll be telling people to vote for you because you make sense. You absolutely make sense. I mean, I had never heard of this office until I started researching questions for you. But I mean, it just seems like it's muddied and it needs to be clarified. The waters need to be cleared up, But what environmental, well, you know what? You already answered that. You did already answer that. See, we'll just be talking and then the answers to the questions will just come out without me even knowing it. But how do you see the office contributing to climate resilience at the local level?
This is so important to me as an environmental justice advocate. I had talked about earlier, helping oppose a refinery. Actually, the refinery was owned by Pat Robertson, evangelical Pat Robertson, who opened it in Southern California. And in college, I worked with CalPERG to investigate a toxic waste site in Huntington Beach, and residents were dealing with. I actually helped oppose Chevron, who was trying to apply the oil refinery. And El Segundo was trying to apply for an expansion of their permit to have no limits on their emissions during startup and shutdowns, which is when they produce the most, and have no monitoring during malfunctions. And I was the only one taking on this opposition. My letter resulted in a town hall, and they pared back the air quality board pared back their application. But so I have experience doing this work, and I'm actually the chair of the Environmental Affairs Committee on my local's neighborhood council, my local neighborhood council as well. So it's very important to me because the climate, obviously, it's affecting everybody. It's affecting the fact that we have the worst air pollution. We had these terrible fires in Los Angeles, and I'm very concerned that our city is not prepared for future climate change issues. And we have a law called CEQA in California, which is basically a state version of the EPA.
Mhm.
And what's going on right now is a lot of these real estate developers are trying to water it down or eliminate it entirely so they can build wherever they want, however they want. But my concern is, to make sure that it's being enforced properly. There's like a development project near where I live, actually, that was planning on, producing so much carbon emissions because they insisted on building on a hillside, and it would have resulted in like 2,300 diesel trucks of dirt being taken out and 25 trees, protected trees, being destroyed. And we have so many vacant lots around the city. Like, why do you need to build on the hillside?
Were they
But
going for a nice view or something? Is they needed a view from the factory or?
I'm not sure. Their neighbor would be Katy Perry, so I don't know if that.
Oh, well, everybody wants to be neighbors with Katy Perry. Oh.
Yeah, I don't really, yeah. But I know that there's a lot of these bonuses and discounts and whatnot, exceptions that are made for building places in certain places in the city, like near a transit stop or something.
Ah,
And but they can misrepresent their application in order to obtain those things too. And my goal is to make sure to review these applications effectively, and so that people are not trying to misrepresent their applications, but also making sure we're prioritizing things like affordable housing, because our current city attorney is doing the opposite, and that can also alleviate housing concerns. But the other couple of issues is we have a law maintaining trees in our tree canopy in Los Angeles, and this law is often violated by property owners, not getting the proper permits, destroying acres of many trees. And so I want to make sure that's properly enforced, so that way we're not we're maintaining our tree canopy, which is our really important in a city like ours, and also making sure to enforce any other environmental laws. We have a nuisance law, which allows us to file lawsuits if someone is like illegally dumping or doing other things that are nefarious, polluting in our neighborhoods. We have a lot of factories, oil refineries, all these corporations that often get away with a lot of things because they donate to these political campaigns and silence folks. And I think it's so important that we combat that and that we incorporate climate change in everything that we do. It's incredibly important, and that the city attorney actually advises the ports of LA, the airports, and LADWP, and making sure that climate change is incorporated into that advisals, that these agencies are planning ahead for these things, is also something the city attorney can do.
so you're working to restore ethics and fairness to this office. I love it. I love it. What areas of the office's work do you believe deserve more public transparency?
Um, That's a good question. I think the fact that it can advise all of these agencies like the Board of Police Commission, the Planning Commission, the mayor and city council, there's not enough transparency on the advisals, I think, in terms of making sure that the city attorney is holding those people responsible for following the law. Other people have also noted that the litigation is not transparent in terms of how the city attorney is settling cases, that people don't know, what's going on with that too. I think in general, the city overall needs to do better in transparency. There isn't much connection. We don't. I haven't heard of anybody doing a town hall since ICE, since that agency has started. The us as public officials, just being open to connecting with the people can in of itself be an empowering force, showing that we're public servants, and listening to people. And I think that's so important, especially right now, because people are feeling that they're on their own and they don't feel
Right.
supported by their city. And I think we have to step up and make sure that we're connecting with the people. And I want to make sure that I'm informing people of what I'm doing, through social media or newsletters. I think it's so important. The other thing, I'm already doing this in my campaign, but in my office, I also want to explain the law. We had changes in the law the last couple of years in terms of how you have to pass cyclists, pedestrian laws. And I wanted to inform people like this is a safe way, to pass cyclists. Luckily, an animator helped me create this like little cute video, and it's humanizing people, humanizing people who bike, who take transit, and that's what we need right now is like more community, just to connect with people.
So if you think there was more education about the law that, oh, how do I want to word this? Are people more sensitive about following the law if they understand it? Like you have laws for motorists to not injure cyclists, but do cyclists understand what the law is? Do cyclists understand that they're like in Ohio, they're treated like a car. You have to stop at stop signs. You have to stop at traffic lights. And some just barrel right through it. And it's like, okay, if you want me to not hit you, then maybe you need to stop when you're supposed to stop. Like it's a work both ways type of thing, right?
Yeah, I guess so. But well, right now in our city, we have more people dying on our streets due to cars than homicides. And
Right.
I think a big issue is reckless driving and speeding. And what you're talking about is what's called the Idaho stop. It's actually legal in multiple states in the country where if there's no if it's safe enough, like a bike goes through, and that's because bikes operate on momentum. And often the studies have shown that actually when they do stop, they often get hit by the car. So it's in a way it becomes
I didn't
safer.
know it had a name.
Yeah,
I,
it
I
actually
didn't
came,
know that. Okay.
it came from the state of Idaho. And yeah, and so I understand that, and I think that's the issue. Oftentimes, if people are not used to being around bikes, and there's like back in the day, people would walk and bike and drive and have their horses all on the same street. And as we
Right.
keep separating these things, it's almost like people are driving faster, they have bigger cars, and it becomes a bigger risk. And so a resolution could be, separating the bikes, but I think overall it's us having slowing down and being more aware of our surroundings
More
because
aware. Yeah.
yeah, because also like I want to have kids being able to play outside. Like kids don't play outside anymore in LA. They should feel safe doing that. They should feel, decades ago, 70% of kids bike to school. That gives them independence, health. They arrive to school more alert, and so I want to try to make a healthier environment. And I think my goal with the videos is really humanizing cyclists because I feel like there's
Right.
this idea that we're like us versus them. But if you go to like another country, there is no separation because everybody at some point has ridden a bike before or does ride a bike. It's just a mode of transportation. And my goal is humanizing people and making sure that we're all just trying to get home safely. Uh,
So you do have to shift, you have to try to change people's attitudes about the world around them,
yeah.
which I totally get that. And sometimes it's difficult when you're doing that in such a large metropolitan area. Like you could probably do that successfully where I live at, like a little suburb. But in Los Angeles, it's like, wow, it's so many people and it's so much traffic and it's so much space. And how do you get through to, I don't know, is it millions of people? How do you do that? How do you communicate that to such a large population?
Well, I think it's a good combination of like, well, social media. That's where I put some things like videos on. website, image or photos, even doing something small as whenever you hold an event, incorporating alternative modes of transportation in the event information instead of just driving information, as well as making appearances at events. Like we
Right.
have event called Ciclavia, where they close down the streets for bikes and rollerbladers and whatnot, and even just being there, connecting with the people can be helpful. Or organizing special bike rides to work. That's something I would love to do. Is organizing, like, I think they call them bike buses. So you just get a group of people going to City Hall together. We're all going to downtown, going to work, and that also helps elevate the position of cyclists. Or even, I have a lot of videos where I am taking the bus or taking the train. Again, showing that anybody can do this. There's a lot of misinformation about the bus or the trains, and so
But it
connecting with people. Yeah.
but it also underscores the importance of the city attorney being present in the city, not just staying in their office and, signing this and signing that and filing this and file. You need to be out in these communities because it is such a large area. People need to see you. You need to play the role of not just an attorney, but an educator, a leader. You're not just a lawyer, you're a leader. And you can't do that if you're, just shaking hands and seated in your big office in your big spinny chair all day. I mean, I like the idea of you, like and I know people use him as an example a lot, but Mom Donnie, you see him walking the streets. He walks from City Hall to Gracie Mansion. People love that. They love seeing their mayor out on the street and they can go shake his hand and say hello. I would love to see, the people running my city out in the city. Why is that such a novel idea? I would love to be able to ask you questions. Educate me on a change in the law. Educate me on some new thing that might benefit me and my children. What's wrong with that? I think that's a great idea.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I completely agree. And I wish I could see my politicians outside as well.
But again, it's easy to do in like in my city, we have coffee with the mayor or something, but we're a small city. And maybe sometimes, the politicians feel like it's just too big to tackle. But if you're going to take on the job, then you have to consider that and you still have to do it. And you can't say no just because it looks hard, right? It looks difficult. You just have to double your efforts, triple your efforts. And there are people who are not willing to do that. And are you willing to do that, Aida?
Oh, of course. I mean, that's why I've been an activist and an organizer for so long, on top of, being a legal aid attorney and, human rights attorney, because I've been so dedicated to the community. So that's something I will definitely continue to do in City Hall. Like I was saying before, I'm already on the streets and I never see a single candidate whenever I'm at a strike or a rally. So, I'm already doing that work.
I mean, that's pretty remarkable that you don't see any other candidates, but also what the one questioner said about they haven't given any opinion on the changes that the city wants to make to the office. Like, do people just think they can just casually run for office? I mean, what do you have to actually talk to people and give your opinion and go on these different platforms like TikTok and tell people what you're thinking and what your plans are. Like, you can't phone it in. You really can't. But I understand that takes money. So how is your campaign fundraising going?
Fundraising is definitely the biggest hurdle, I think, especially in a race that's not as flashy, as like mayor or something like that. And
Right.
for me, it's really calling donors. It's using social media. It's using events. I have a drag show coming up at the end of the month that I'll be fundraising at. And so, but at the same time, my campaign is funded by workers, activists. We're not a campaign that takes PAC money, or we're not funded by special interests. We have the lowest average donation of any other candidate. The other candidates have average donations of $300 and $500. Ours is $58. It just shows you the type of people that donate to us.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because I want to represent the people. I don't want to represent corporate lawyers and executives that are the ones kind of profiting off of, the situation we have in our city with rising rents and, climate change and whatnot. I want to be supported directly by the same people that are in the street advocating for making sure that our elders are not being evicted from their apartment buildings, or making sure that we have native plants planted in our parks and gardens, and making sure that we have safe roads for kids biking to school. So I'm very much connected to the people on ground, but people can always donate at my website.
I think it's tiny, but you can see it is Aida4LA.com. You guys go to Aida4LA.com and follow her on TikTok. Follow her on all the socials and give. Do you also need volunteers? Do you do like phone banking or knocking on doors or handing out flyers and stuff?
Yes, we do all of those things. We have phone banking. We have knocking on doors. My website has a place where you can submit your information to sign up to volunteer. We can connect you with what you're interested in. So we definitely are looking for volunteers. We have a weekly phone bank on Tuesday evenings, but we can also work around your schedule. And we have multiple canvassing dates coming up.
So what's it like being a practicing attorney and then running for office, but you're also running to run the office that you used to work in? What is that like?
I think it's really honestly inspiring to me, and I feel like I'm doing it, like even though coming from a working class background, I'm putting into motion what is so difficult, and I feel like I'm representing a community that is often unheard in our political system. And that's what inspired me to run as well. And I think it's like, it's one thing to complain about how our system works, it's another to try to take it on and change it yourself.
Right.
And I've always been the type of person to take on challenges, especially as an immigrant, like having to work with very little resources, and in spite of, prejudice or whatever, that my goals are important, and I want to make sure that we create a better world for everyone.
Okay. Somebody wanted to know how your name is pronounced. It's pronounced exactly as it is spelled. How about that?
Well,
No, I'm kidding. It is Aida. Aida. You know what? I'm used to pronouncing the name, but you probably have a phonetic spelling that you use for people.
Yeah, it's Aida Ashouri is like the Iranian way of pronouncing it, I would say. But yeah, Aida, AIDA, the number 4 LA on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Blue Sky, and .com for the website.
So we have about 10 minutes left. So I want to know from you, what do you believe the city attorney's office can accomplish when you win that people right now could use like day one? Day one, you go in there and you go, the people asked for this and I'm going to do this right now. What do you think the office can accomplish like that?
Well, I would say a few different things, but I'll pick 3 top things. Day one, I want to investigate the ties between LAPD and ICE. I want to. There's been calls for, or basically people have observed that this has been happening, and I want to investigate it because the city council has not done that. And so I want to break our ties between private surveillance companies and that have been tied to ICE that our city continues to approve contracts for. I want to advise our city to do that. I want to open an office that helps tenants and investigates violations of tenant anti-harassment ordinance, as well as code violations. And I want to reopen the family violence unit office and expand it to also include domestic violence restraining orders that have to do with this thing that you had mentioned.
Yeah. The pew pew, as we like to call it.
Yeah, exactly. And I want to make sure that we enforce Measure HLA, which is the law that was going to add, different safety measures to our streets, bus lanes, bike lanes, improving our sidewalks to make sure that our streets are safer. And I want to implement a policy that I would train our deputy city attorneys in terms of how we file cases, and making sure that we're not filing cases that show misconduct, that show criminalization of poverty, and that we prioritize care for victims who don't necessarily want to cooperate but we need services. And so I would draft and implement that policy that I would also train our deputy city attorneys to implement. And that my goal overall in the office is to prioritize people over, convictions, over politics. My goal is to make sure that people are supported, and by reopening these offices that were closed with the current incumbent, that's, I think, the start of the conversation, or the start of the policies. But once we do that, then we are able to expand and look into investigating lawsuits against polluters, against people who are violating people's civil rights, or conducting wage theft, and making sure that we implement a website where we can take directly complaints from people and provide multilingual resources, which is something I did in legal aid as well. And our Asian communities are actually very underserved. In terms of having multilingual resources. So I want to make sure that people are informed of their rights, and that they have a place to go to when their rights are violated. So I would say those are probably my most immediate action items as city attorney.
So let me just ask you this question. Totally has nothing to do with your race, but do you think LA is ready for the Olympics, or can get ready in the next 2 years? Do you think it's possible?
I mean, I would ask, how would you define ready? Because I
Well,
think it's,
I was looking at the current occupant of the White House's budget for 2027, and one of the things they requested is more FBI funding to prepare for LA. And I'm thinking, okay, are they also going to ask for money for Los Angeles to hire more officers so they can also prepare, or are they just going to handle everything? So I want to know from a resident, what do you think your city can handle this? I mean, obviously they were awarded it, but is it going to take the 2 years, or are you ready now? Could you have the Olympics right now?
I think there's a lot of problems around the Olympics coming here. One, the fact that we still have a ban and restriction on certain people coming into our country.
Right.
We still have ICE on our streets and now our airports. So people are probably terrified of coming here. The other issue is our city has not done a good job of planning for it, in the sense that it was first advertised as a car-free Olympics. They've done nothing to address that.
Did you say car free?
The goal was to have everything at a stadium near public transit, but they have not expanded public transit to be effective enough. And I can't imagine having all these tourists renting cars. It's going to be a nightmare. But what's crazy is their way to amend this is they're planning on having helicopters for the. I'm not even kidding. That they even have a special partner with the Olympics. That's a helicopter, allegedly no emissions helicopter.
No.
The city wants to expand city property to allow for private individuals to use their helicopter. I mean, somebody
pointed just going to be these helicopters everywhere, just people's hair all flipping and flying up every. What?
I feel like there's a lot of mismanagement and issues with planning. They approved like a $2.7 billion expansion of the LA Convention Center during a time when ICE was already invading our cities. And it just seems like people are not in reality of, the city budget.
Yes, yes. That's what I'm trying to hint at. Like, the federal government is like, yeah, we're ready, but LA needs money too. That's, who's going to support the city?
Yeah, and I think
not
there's
a gondola. What?
Oh, that's another story. Yeah, I've been working with organizations neighborhood groups opposing that because we just can, I mean, just expand the bus service. There was a really effective bus service from Union Station, and they could easily do it in a more effective way instead of having an aerial tram that invades people's privacy, that destroys a park, other neighborhoods, homes. It's just there is this. I feel like people are living in some sort of fantasy of what they think the Olympics are going to be like, and not understanding that people are dealing with real issues of rising rents, or being pushed out of their communities, of feeling in danger. I mean, small businesses dealing with rising rents too. I mean, the economy is not doing well, and this could have been something that could inject our city with, like, I mean, Paris, they expanded transit and bike lanes like crazy.
Right.
It
Right.
was their air is cleaner now because of it. But our city has chosen not to do that, and it's so detrimental. In a way, we are going to be paying the price of having increased enforcement efforts in our city, and it's going to possibly endanger more people. And it's possible that the police it also obtain more weaponry. They've already put that on their budget, actually, but
And that might lead to more lawsuits. That might lead to more litigation,
that will
which will
definitely.
that'll tax the city attorney's office even more. Gosh. It's like people are living in like the model. You know how you have to make a model, like a little diorama of what you want things to look like when you have a project coming up. People are living inside of the diorama. They're not really living outside looking at how do we make the diorama come to life without, damaging people's day-to-day lives.
Yeah, yeah. I
Wow.
mean, we should be making sure that people are able to stay in their homes, that we expand public transit, that we have hotels, but then make sure to crack down on illegal Airbnbs, because that's also going to be a big issue. And yeah, and
Price
making sure
gouging. Price gouging.
that's
On gasoline and hotel stays and those Airbnbs, people are going to be quadrupling the price. That's a lot to think about. And you got 2 years, Aida.
ready.
You're right. Okay, so we've come to the end of our time together. This has been wonderful. Thank you so very much for joining us this evening. Remind the people again where they can, how they can support your campaign.
Yes, thank you so much. You can go to my website, AIDA, the number 4LA.com, and you can sign up to volunteer. You can donate there. If you're in the city of LA, the city actually has a 6-to-1 matching program, so your money goes even farther. You can also go to all of my socials, AIDA, the number 4LA, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Twitter, and follow me. And also sign up for my newsletter on my website, and I can send you more information about the campaign, and make sure to register to vote, so you can vote June 2nd. Early ballots go out I think May 4th or May 5th. And this is such an important time where we can actually elect someone who is an activist, is an organizer, that's not in part of the political establishment, and we could dramatically change our city in a way that we have not seen in my lifetime.
Yeah, you're aiming to restore ethics. Remember this, people. Ethics. Ethics and fairness. That's what you want from your attorneys and your city attorneys, from your city, from your government. That's what you want. Good character matters. Good judgment matters also, people. Again, you said early voting starts, or they're mailing the ballots out on May 4th or the 5th. And then the primary is June 6th.
Second.
June 2nd. June 2nd is the primary, people. But early voting, you guys have early in-person voting, right?
Correct.
So if you can vote early, vote early. Make sure you are registered. Make sure you have all of your required documents. We just never know what shenanigans the government is going to pull. So make sure you're prepared. Again, Aida for LA. Follow her on TikTok. Go to her website. Find out how you can support her campaign. Aida, we love, love, love having you. And to the people. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for being in the audience and playing by the rules. We really appreciate it. We want you to know that we are going to be here again tomorrow because we are here every day. Let me see. Tomorrow we have, Daquan Neal. Listen, I met Daquan Neal back in 2023 when he was just a little. Now he's running for office. He's running for Dayton, Ohio, Montgomery County's state representative for that district. And that is at 6 o'clock, followed by Tamra Taylor, who is running for the Nevada State Assembly District 22 out of Henderson, Nevada, at 8 o'clock. So again, join us tomorrow at 6 o'clock p.m. and 8 o'clock for more of these wonderful town halls. We really love that the public shows up and has their questions ready for the candidates. We love to present these candidates to the communities because sometimes they're grassroots and they don't have the name recognition, and this helps them get their name out. So people, please remember, spread the word. Spread the word when you hear about a candidate that you like, that you agree with their views, their platform. Spread the word about them. We are Our Vote Counts. We are a nonpartisan movement uniting Americans from all walks of life to empower voters, support candidates of integrity, and ensure every voice is heard. If you want to join us, you can join our Discord. The link is in our DMs, but if you have Discord, you can find Our Vote Counts on there. But also, we're doing this. We're here. We're doing this through November. Through education, outreach, accountability, and action, we're building a stronger democracy, one informed vote at a time. And if you would like to join us to be a moderator, to do what I do, just talk. Send us a DM and let us know if you're interested. Again, Aida, thank you for joining us. We thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. Remember, your vote is your power. Everyone, have a good evening. Bye.
Thanks for having me. Thanks everybody for your questions. Bye.